Hey everyone, it's Erin from the Impatient Gardener, and today we're doing something a little different, which is a bit of a Q&A. You guys have had so many great questions on the last couple of videos that I thought it would be good to just address some of those questions in a video, although I have tried to answer many of them in the comments. And then I actually went out to Instagram and I asked if anyone had questions there as well. So I do have a few questions from there as well. I don't typically do Q&A videos. If you guys like this format, do me a favor, give this a thumbs up. And that will or leave a comment and let me know if you'd like more of these. We can do these if you guys like them. I'm going to try to do this all in one take. It will never happen. When I make a video, you guys, everything has about 5 takes and the outtakes are ridiculous. You'll probably see some of those someday. I try to save them, but we'll see if they ever see the light of day. So the first video I wanted to talk about was the video that I did that I called How I Water Everything. And one of the first things I laid out in that video, actually in the description, was that this was not a video about my philosophy on watering. It was just a video about all the stuff I use to water things and all the different ways I water things, from very simple to a bit more complicated. And so that led to several questions from people saying, well, what is your philosophy on watering? So my philosophy on watering and fertilizing is to take it easy a bit. Now, first of all, you need to know that I'm in zone 5B. They say I question the B all the time. I live in southeastern Wisconsin, and I have a bit of a special climate going on because I'm like 300 feet from Lake Michigan. So there is a great deal of influence from the lake, which is a really large body of water that affects everything here. So we are in a climate that gets mostly regular, semi-regular rain. We will go periods where we get dry. This year it's actually been more wet than normal, much more wet than normal. But we're not in a situation in which we're in a desert where we never get any rain. We get more rain in, say, one good rainstorm than some people get in a year. That's too much rain, by the way. So my philosophy on watering is this. I water plants, generally trees and shrubs, plants that I want to make sure they get well established. They get watered regularly for the first year. So for the first week, they'll get watered maybe every day or every other day. That gradually goes to 2 times a week. And then within about 3 weeks, or a month, I'm at once a week basically, but I water very deeply. So it's less frequent watering, more deeply. I'm sure you guys have all heard that before. The whole idea is to get those plants to put their roots down deep so that they are able to take care of themselves in the future. For perennials, I do essentially the same thing, although I pay, I would say, less attention to those. I try to give those a super good soaking at the time of planting. And then after that, honestly, I try to hit them regularly, but I wouldn't say that I'm great about that. And then of course annuals are an entirely different thing. Annuals, you're just trying to have them put on their show. You don't care really about where those roots are growing. You just want them to look great all the time for the time that you're growing them. So those typically get pretty regular watering. Obviously the things that are on drip, which is the patio garden right along the house, that is on drip. That gets watered every day. The containers get watered probably no more than every other day. I like to plant in very large containers so that I don't need to water as often, because I don't want to be a slave to those things. And I do not have drip running to any containers except for the window box and then the 2 containers in the vegetable garden that the roses are growing in. Other than that, nothing is on drip, mostly because it would be very difficult or impossible to run drip effectively to those containers. And so I deal with that by, like I said, planting in bigger containers that need water less frequently. So that's my philosophy, is that you grow plants. The phrase is growing plants hard. I'm sorry, I am distracted because I think I just saw a hideous weed over in the other garden flowering. It's creeping bellflower, the bane of my existence. And if one of those is flowering, I am not doing a good job keeping up on the weeds. And by the way, I'm sorry if it gets loud here. It's Saturday morning. Oh, there goes the lawnmower. It's early Saturday morning in our neighborhood, and a lot of people tend to run their lawn machines. Hold on a second. Let's just see if he drives away. So anyway, long story short, I expect my plants my perennials, tree shrubs, to mostly take care of themselves. Of course, there are exceptions. There are plants that I love and I will give special attention to. Like I said, I call those my diva plants. But I know when I'm going into growing those plants that I am making the choice to put extra time and effort into those plants, which means that a lot of the other plants I grow have to just survive on their own because I'm spending all my time with the divas. So several of you made a comment, you thought that was funny, which I didn't even realize I was making a joke because it's such a fact of life that we bought the new sprinkler so we could find the old sprinkler. Update, we still have not found the old sprinkler, but that new sprinkler is nice. The water, sprinklers are very hard, especially the flippy kind. I'm sure there is a name for that. Because the water stream, you have to really watch that water stream. It can be really powerful. They're fabulous for lawns, but maybe not so great for plants and gardens. So you really have to make sure there's a screw on it where you can adjust it to kind of break the water up a little bit more. Also in that video, you guys, I think I got a little aggressive in my comments about the water timer that we have the drip on in the vegetable garden. I feel a little bad about it I kept saying that I hated it. I feel like that was probably a strong word. But I don't like it. You guys know that. Several of you had fabulous suggestions for other timers that I should consider. And one of them, and actually I communicated with somebody about this, one of them recommended this. This is the Beehive. Ironically, it's by Orbits. And I said, well, I don't think that'll work because I need multiple zones. And each one of these only manages one zone, but you can buy multiples of them. So I actually have bought 3 of these. We only have 3 zones running right now. And I'm going to give this a try. This runs on Bluetooth and wireless. The other issues that we have over there is that 1, there's no electricity over there, so I can't have anything that needs to plug in. It has to be battery operated. And 2, because it's so far from our house and our Wi-Fi here is sketchy, I wasn't sure that I didn't want to rely on something that was only wired, that would only require Wi-Fi out there. So this is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The main thing I want out of a timer is I want to be able to control it from my phone. And I don't care if I have to stand next to the timer in order to control it. I just want to be able to control it from my phone so I can see it much easier instead of working all those damn dials. So hopefully this will be a better solution. I have 2. The third one with the Wi-Fi portion is coming next week. So we'll get that hooked up and I'll report back to see if I like that better or not. Oh, somebody commented, she said, well, I don't see any of the links of any of these products that you're talking about. So this is kind of one of those quirky YouTube things. So in every video, you guys, I do write down, I make a pretty thorough description in which I try to leave links for everything that I've talked about, especially if I'm linking to, any blog posts that I've done about this. A lot of you might not even know that I have a blog. The blog's been around for 9 years now. It's just theimpatientgardener.com, and I've written about a lot of stuff there. So there are a lot of tie-ins there. So I try to leave those links there. The description can be hard to find. You look underneath the video and right above where you're going to hit that thumbs up button. And there's a little arrow, and ironically the arrow is already pointing down. So you need to click the arrow that's already pointing down in order to pull the description down so that you can read see the whole description. And that's where I put all those links. So I know some people miss that, so check there. And if I ever miss something in the description, I will go back and add it in. If I see a comment where somebody says, hey, you said you were going to leave a link to whatever in the description and you didn't. So I will always go back and edit that description, or if there's a mistake I make in the video and I want to clarify something, that goes in the description as well. So do make sure you check out the descriptions, you guys. Sometimes I also copy the description into a comment. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but so check that description by clicking that little arrow. I know it's a little confusing. I wish YouTube would make that a little bit more obvious. So in that video, I talk a lot about hoses. And first of all, most of you are getting in arguments with your partners about hoses. Many of you are not coiling them like me, so we're all in this together, you guys. A lot of people recommended those flexible hoses that shrink down. I will tell you, I have tried those hoses, and personally, I don't like those, but people do seem to love them, so you should give those a shot. Make sure you check the comments. You guys are so many great suggestions in the comments of that video. I will refer to those comments for years because there's so much good information in there, including links to how people are managing rainwater and their favorite products. Just good stuff in there. And then the last question that I want to talk about was that there were several people who asked how I'm watering the new garden, which flows into our next video, but this is a good kind of ending for the watering video. So you saw probably in the video for the new garden that I do have soaker hose in one corner of the garden, and that is the corner of the garden that I can't reach with another hose. No matter, I mean, we've connected as many hoses as we can, and I just can't get out there. So what I do with that soaker hose is I have that running around, and then of course I can plug that in closer to the house, so it's no problem to get that plugged in. The rest of that garden, I'm either watering by hand or I'm using the sprinkler. I don't like using the sprinkler, as I've mentioned before, for all the reasons that I've already mentioned. But I will water by hand, and if it gets really dry, I will go around and use that sprinkler just to keep that soil moist. The mulch is helping a lot there, and those plants are that's definitely an example of a garden that's going to have to learn to survive on its own, which we knew going in that I was looking for tough plants there. All right, so the next video we're going to talk about is the tour of the new garden area. And first of all, I should probably clarify something, because somebody asked a great question. They said, well, you said you've planted other gardens before. Do you have before and after pictures? So I get very confusing when I talk about gardens. I talk about the garden as a whole being essentially my entire yard, and then I talk about sections of the garden as gardens. So I'm calling that the new garden, which just means it's a new area of my yard. This is the first and only house I've ever lived in, and the first house that I've ever gardened in. So I have no before and afters from other places, and unfortunately, although I've changed basically everything in this yard from the time we bought this house 18 years ago, I was a little lax on taking a lot of before pictures. So there are some of those on the blog, and things have come a long way. I wish I had documented better. I would say, you guys, advice to you, take so many pictures of your garden, especially when you're working on a new area, because you're going to want to see how far you've come. And I might have some of those. I just really have to dig deep to find them, because, I mean, it was 18 years ago. That's before I was keeping track of photos. Some of those might even have been prints, for crying out loud. Andrea asked, she made the comment, she said, pretty daring to put hostas in that garden. And it is. I had actually said, if you remember in the video where I talk about the plants that are growing in that garden, I said I wasn't going to put hostas because I don't want to manage deer over there. Well, I did. I just wanted that. I couldn't imagine the shadier portion of that garden coming together without that bold texture of a hosta. So for now they're there. I actually had to move those two big hostas out of another area in the garden where they had gotten way overgrown for where I put them. So they needed new homes anyway. So I thought, let's give this a try. I do run around frequently with deer repellent, so it's really honestly not that big of a deal to just stop over there and hit those hostas on my way. But I know that if I am lax on deer repellent, I know those hostas will be the very first thing that the deer go after, because frankly the deer were sleeping underneath that pine tree up until I cleared it out. So it's like they think it's basically their own backyard. So we'll see how that goes. Allie said, I've been pronouncing Astilbe wrong my whole life. And then there were a lot of other comments about how I used a lot of botanical names. So first of all, here's sort of what I always say. It doesn't matter how you pronounce the plant, just plant the plant. Don't get caught up on pronunciation of names. That varies even from place to place. I tend to use botanical names more often actually in summer, because my brain is more up on them in summer. I will just tell you a quick story. I had a very embarrassing situation happen. This winter, I found myself in a situation in which I got to spend a day with Fergus Garrett from Great Dixter, and we went to a nature preserve nearby. And it was early, it was actually the 1st of March that we went there. So the only thing that was really around was some weeds that were popping up, and we were sort of pointing out plants and talking about them. And I couldn't remember the botanical names of anything I was talking about. And of course, especially when you're comparing the US to England, the common names are often much different. And it was such an embarrassing moment in my life. I mean, here I am, I get this great opportunity to just pick Fergus Garrett's brain for a day, and I can't remember the botanical name of creeping Jenny or garlic mustard weed. It was just, oh, it was bad, you guys. Anyway, during summer, during the gardening season, when I'm surrounded by plants, I tend to know the botanical names better. You don't need to know the botanical names. I just like to use them when I can, because it's easier for me to know that, and also because common names vary so much from place to place. I saw just the other day on one of the gardening Facebook groups, there was an argument that broke out because someone posted a picture of a weed, and someone said, "What is this weed?" or "What is this plant?" And someone said, "Oh, well, that's snow on the mountain." And someone else, "That's not snow on the mountain, that's gout weed." Someone else said, "Well, no, that's bishop's weed." Somebody else had a different name for it. And they were in a pretty heated argument about this. Turns out they were all right. Those are all common names for the same plant. And this is why common names become problematic. So point is, don't worry about how you pronounce the plants. It doesn't matter. And don't let anyone ever shame you if you have pronounced a plant wrong. Do your best, try it, and they'll figure it out. I mean, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing everything right, and I'm sure some of you think that I pronounce Nicotiana wrong. I know you do. And I know a lot of people think I'm pronouncing Nepeta wrong, and it might be, but that's how I pronounce it. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it, just plant it. Dylan says, are you going to do something with the stump? And made a note that I should think about planting native plants along the creek. So there's that big stump in the middle of the garden. The path kind of curves around it. And that stump is where this whole garden started. There was a huge ash tree there. Obviously, you can tell that stump is at least 5 feet across, if not more. And so that's how that garden started. It was an ash tree. It succumbed to emerald ash borer, like all of the ash trees on our property. And it had to come out. It was starting to lose huge chunks. So that was one that was a little scary. So that one had to come out. And I was left with this part of the garden that was it was just weeds before. I just let that be totally natural. But now there was all this sun, and so not great weeds were coming in there, so something had to be done. And also, that's the reason I started that garden. It's the entrance to our house, and I've got these beautiful gardens that surround our house, but it was like a weedy mess out by the driveway, and I thought, well, who wants that? That's how that garden started. So am I going to do something with that stump? I don't know. This year I did put some old potting mix in one of the little holes in it and planted a Nicotiana, so maybe a Nicotiana will grow out the top of it. He's suggesting he or she, Dylan, is suggesting I put a pot on there. And you guys know I love pots in the garden, so I might do that. The only problem is that I'm not going to drag a hose out there to water it, so that becomes problematic. Oh my God, another neighbor just fired up a lawnmower, you guys. This could get bad. I'm going to go quick. And then native plants along the creek. Yes, so there are several native plants growing around that creek right now, including, in particular, marsh marigolds. And a few other things. So the goal is to weed out the things like the creeping Jenny that tends to grow in there that are not native. And I will have to go through there and just start pulling. I'll never get rid of them. I'll just try to manage them. And I did plant some great blue lobelia there, which is a native here. And my goal is along the creek to keep it to natives, especially along waterways. It's really important to be very careful with what you plant because plants can travel to other areas and cause problems. So that is definitely in the cards. Oh, okay, speaking of lobelia, you guys, I made a big fuss about that Sky Racer Deep Rose, or was that what it's called? Starship Deep Rose lobelia. And multiple people said, hey, is that hardy there? And I thought, well, must be, I bought it, right? It's not, it's hardy to zone 6. And you know what happened? I was ordering plants for a gift for someone, and I found out that I could get one more plant under the shipping. By the way, I could build a whole garden based on all the plants I've bought as extras to make the shipping worth it. And I just threw it in the cart, and I clearly was hurrying, and I never even looked. It's a zone 6 plant, so it probably won't survive here, but it'll be a good test, right? I'm not gonna do anything special to it. I'm not gonna protect it in winter, and we'll just see how it goes. And if it comes back next year, it comes back next year. Lesson learned, check the zone. And then lastly, and probably one of the most important questions from that video, was several people wanted to know what sources I used to get my plants for that video and how I got landscaping plugs. So first, because this is a big issue and really frustrating for homeowners, at least for many of them, I mean, for me included. So I got several of the plants that were in there came from Walter's Gardens, and Walter's Gardens was nice enough to send me those plants for this garden so that I can show you how those plants grow. So that was very nice of Walter's Gardens to send some of those to me. Many of those were bare root and other ones were plugs. Other plants, like most of the grasses, I got as plugs, and I got those through wholesale accounts that I have. So this is the big gap, I think, in the garden market, is that homeowners who don't have wholesale accounts and aren't able to get wholesale accounts because you won't qualify for them can't get their hands on plugs. And my theory on that is because I think the reason no one stepped into that part of the market is because plugs are so sensitive. Like, they have to be shipped quick and you got to get those in the ground, or more than likely you're really supposed to plant them. I mean, the point of plugs, they go to garden centers, they plant them in pots, they grow them on, and then you're paying for a bigger plant that has been properly cared for at the most important part of its life. And that's why you're buying plants in bigger pots. So I think probably plant providers are probably thinking they don't want to have to worry about guaranteeing plants for homeowners who might not be set up to properly care for plugs. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, I don't care. I'll take care of them, and I'll take, you know, if I don't take care of them, I understand. And that's how I felt about it too. So I would say if you are a plant company who does especially mail order, there is a opening in the market to provide people plants, plugs for plants. If you guys know of a source that does sell retail for plugs, please leave that note in the comment, because I think it would help a lot of people. I think there are some Midwest Ground Covers, I think, sells retail. There are a few places that specialize in particular in ground cover type plants that do that, so look for those. So I know it's frustrating when I show you guys these plants that is hard for you to get. My only suggestion would be, and this has worked out pretty well for me, befriend a local independent garden center, in particular a nursery who grows plants on themselves, and see if you can't work with them to buy. There's no reason why they can't sell you plugs. Of course, they'll have to charge you tax on those things because they are reselling them to you, but work with them and let them know. And I would say reach out now and say, listen, I am planning a big project in my garden. Can you help me procure plants for this? And I understand that you can't guarantee this. I mean, you might have to be very flexible about when you take delivery of these things and have a plan for how to care for them. But try that. And if that doesn't work, maybe reach out to like a local landscaper and see if you can't partner with them some way to provide you some plants, because they would also have access to those kinds of plants. So that is frustrating. Let's try to fix that in the market, you guys. Maybe talk to retail garden places and see and let them know that you're interested in that and that you recognize the care responsibilities for plugs. And you recognize too, I mean, I know when I plant all those plugs, I know they're all not going to make it. I know I have to account for a certain amount of loss, and I'm willing to do that, and you probably would be too. Okay, a couple other, then I reached out to Instagram and got some questions there, and some of those questions, funny, they were pretty broad ranging. So we'll hit on a few of them. First of all was a question about dahlias. So first of all, do you like my set dressing today? These are the first dahlias I've cut. This is Belle of Barmera, a new one for me. I thought it was going to be more hot pink. This is actually very sort of corally. I mean, there's definitely, I would scarlet, corally scarlet. I don't know, but it's a looker. I have been really hesitant to post photos of dahlias growing in my garden on Instagram right now because I get besieged by people saying, my dahlias haven't even started to bloom. What is going on? Don't worry about it. They're not supposed to bloom. I mean, it's very common that dahlias don't start blooming until August. I planted roughly 100 dahlias. I would say 10 of them have blooms right now. It depends a lot on the variety. It depends when you plant them. You guys know I plant mine up in pots, most of mine up in pots ahead of time. So those tend to flower sooner. The single varieties seem to be the earliest to flower for me. So if you're looking for early blooms, start with those single varieties. I like the Happy Single series that they all start with HS. Those seem to be great performers and they start blooming early. So don't worry about that. Okay, then people ask some other questions that sort of are more about me. Somebody asked about the dogs, what kind of dogs. Actually, they asked about Odin. You guys see Odin more than you see Dorothy. We do have 2 dogs. They are Newfoundlands. They are our 3rd and 4th Newfoundland. Dorothy turns 3 on Monday, and Odin is 6. And they are great dogs. I love Newfoundlands. They're fabulous dogs. If you are ever interested in getting a Newfoundland, you want to know more about the breed, I am more than happy to talk to you about it. It is a lot of grooming. In fact, Odin is due for a bath this weekend. Don't tell him. And you just have to be able to deal with a lot of hair. Somebody asked if they are indoor and outdoor dogs. No, our dogs are what I would term as indoor dogs. They are only outside when we are out here or, when we're home. And if they want to hang out outside, but they sleep inside, they hang out inside, and frankly, in summer, they're just plastered to air conditioning vents because they're spoiled. Somebody asked about my job. Yes, I do have a job that has nothing to do with this. I'm a magazine editor, and I love my job, but that is my regular job. So like a lot of you, I work a full-time job, and I take care of the garden on weekends or nights or when I can find time. Now, when it came to planting the new garden, I ended up having to take a couple of vacation days because it became abundantly clear that unless I just sat down and did that project, it was never going to get done and I was going to be chasing plants around forever. So I did take a couple of vacation days for that. But yeah, so that is why my garden is not always perfect, because my garden is not my job. It's a little bit of my job because I do this now and I do consider this a job as well. But I understand people who have a lot going on in their lives and can't be in their garden as much as they would like to, because that's me. Somebody asked if I'm married. I am. Mr. Much More Patient is my husband, and he is much more patient. That is why I call him that. And he is a fabulous help in the garden. He does not really help in the actual garden, but he mostly cleans up after me, or if I need help planting a tree or moving something big. But mostly he just picks up after me a lot, which is absolutely fabulous because I hate that part of it. And then lastly, somebody asked if I ever have garden tours. Basically no is the answer. I think every gardener is reluctant to open their garden up to other people. It is a really personal space, and we tend to see the negative. We tend to see the weeds and the areas that need attention and the plants that are overgrown and this and that. And so we get really, we're really on a macro level in our own gardens. And so it can be very intimidating to open your garden up to other people. That's why you haven't had a full garden tour yet, a video garden tour, because I am trying to get, in fact, it is my goal for this weekend to try to get this garden whipped into shape so that I can give you a garden tour before the dahlias bloom. And then we'll of course do a tour when the dahlias are blooming, because the garden does look really great then. I mean, that's probably when it looks its best, given how much room I dedicate to dahlias. So I have opened up my garden. Last year I did have a group of master gardeners at my garden, and I will tell you, it is good to open up your garden to other people. It is good to hear what people have to say. It's great to see what people notice. So last year I did open it up when the dahlias were blooming, so people were really focused on that. But it's always interesting that the things that I love, like all the little clematis I have climbing up everything, which is like one of the things I just love about my garden, nobody noticed. It's not a single person even noticed a clematis in my garden. So just know that people aren't seeing those things. I think it's great to open up your garden. I've learned more by having friends in my garden and seeing what they say. And it has really dictated the changes that I've made in my garden. So it is a really worthwhile thing. But by the same token, it is a lot of work to get a garden organized for a garden tour, because even though I know that many people would be willing to look past the little problems here and there, I don't want to show it off to people in that way. So, you know, I give huge credit to anybody who opens up their garden for a garden tour, because that is how we all learn and how we all become better gardeners, is by looking at other gardens. But it is a lot of work, and it's intimidating, and it's really sort of opening yourself up. So if you are ever on a garden tour, be kind to the person who opened up their garden to you, because it's super stressful and a lot of work, and they're really putting themselves out there for you. I guess I still haven't answered the question, which is to say, I don't really have any intention of opening up my garden like on a public level anytime soon, but you never know. If there was some sort of cause or something, some sort of fundraiser, you know, one of the things that I always admire is that the National Garden Scheme in England, which, by the way, there are great videos. If you search National Garden Scheme, there are great videos all over YouTube right now where you can get an inside peek at private gardens, because they weren't able to open them up this year in England. That whole National Garden Scheme is a fundraiser. So people open up their gardens, and I think sometimes you have to pay an entry fee, but they all sell cake and tea, and you got to pay a little bit. And it's all a fundraiser for the NHS. So if there was some program where I could open up my garden and turn it into a fundraiser, that would make me a little bit more inclined to do that. But obviously it's a very private place here. So I don't know. That's where I am on garden tours. That was the most wishy-washy answer ever. Okay, we're going to stop it there because it is getting very hot, and I need to get to work on this garden if you guys are ever going to get a garden tour out of me. So stay tuned for that. We'll get that going soon. Thank you guys for watching. Do let me know if you like this Q&A, if you're like, you can keep it. Just keep answering the questions in the comments as best you can, because I can't get to them all. Because like I said, you know, job, garden. Also, it's summer. I love summer. I love doing summer things. I am a summer girl through and through. And, you know, it's getting time to like spend some time floating in a pool or something. I hope you guys are all having a great summer, B, a great day in your garden. Thank you so much for your comments and questions, and for following me here and on Instagram. Hit subscribe and get those notifications. I don't know what's going on with notifications right now. I had several people who emailed me and said they hadn't been getting notifications lately, and they missed a bunch of videos. So make sure you hit that little bell after you subscribe, and hopefully that'll work. And you know, there will always be updates coming. So I hope you guys are having a good one, and we'll see you soon.